Okay, so the next talk, got 3 speakers for this one. Mo, Larry, and Curly. Actually, all 3 of them have been snow safety director at Big Sky, and I'm not sure if this is more embarrassing, who this is more embarrassing for, but Jans started at Big Sky 2 years after I was born. I think that's more embarrassing for me. He ran the snow safety program there, and then in the mid-90s, Scotty and Mike showed up and followed his lead. Both Mike's the acting snow safety director there now. Scotty used to be, and obviously Scotty's now at the Sawtooth National Forest Avalanche Center. So between the 3 of them, they've got a ton of experience and probably more stories than we have time to talk about. So with that,
we'll just have one story here. Go from there. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, so we're going to talk about slide back in 1996, December 96 at Big Sky that I think it'll do a couple things. One, it'll really reinforce a lot of things that everyone here who's spoken previously has talked about. There are a lot of really common themes that come up in this. And then also, it's one thing that's a little different that we'll talk about is some kind of operational implications that it had that have changed. And kind of with that in mind, it's just the era that we were in here in 1996 this was kind of like the first really big ski area expansion that got the whole let's move into all this crazy, gnarly, extreme terrain thing going. So it was a little bit out there when this whole expansion happened. And Jens will touch a little bit on the history of it in a minute there. So just an overview of this is Lone Mountain, looking at what we call the south face, which actually mostly faces southeast, the bulk of the paths in here, but anywhere from south through east by the time you get over there. The starting zone's 33 to 52 degrees. This is for the folks that aren't from around there, with most of them in the area we're going to be talking about in kind of that 38 to 43, so good steep prime times angles. It gets, ballpark 400 inches in the starting zones up there on a yearly basis. And this was what people call 90 sick, 90 heaven, if you remember that year. It was really, really good. So there was a lot of snow up there by even by December 26th at that point. And it's a breezy place. You can see in this picture, hey, there's just a bunch of rock there. And there's a reason for that. The predominant winds come and kind of wrap around going that way, which ends up being southwest in the starting zones in question. So the terrain and mitigation history. We'll let Jens talk a little bit here about what happened back in the day.
Okay. Back in the day, it used to be, this was the top lift on the mountain, and this area was controlled with a recoilless rifle. Would shoot up here and do the routes there. Then we got a rope tow up here because of the land trade. It used to be a Forest Service permitted area. Then in 82, 83, there was a land exchange, and this all became private property. So that changed things some, and part of the deal with land trade was they put this rope tow in here, and that was to access this cornice. Before that, this cornice would get real big, and accessing it on a regular basis, we'd try to keep it shoveled down so we didn't have to get so many big cornice chunks down in the lower bowl. So we had a history of doing that, controlling this with artillery and hand charging, and also with an avalanche that was here and then later down here. As far as the south face here goes, that used to not get skied on any regular basis. It was a sign-out area. We'd let people hike up and ski that when we thought it was relatively safe. It was mostly a springtime condition when we were in melt-free cycles. People would ski it then. And also that cooler here, which is a popular route now. Same thing, we'd sign people out to ski that when we thought it was safe. And that was in the 70s and 80s. That was the program. And then along the tram was put in from here up to there. But before the tram went in and the rope was here, once we found out they were going to build a tram, we started trying to learn more about this area. and doing routes there. Previous to that, a lot of times we'd sneak into here, throw some shots out, and ski down the side of Mark's, this first path here. But once we knew the tram was going to go on, we had a concerted effort to hike up here and control some of this from the top. So that really got serious just the first 1 year before the tram went in. We were hiking up there on it maybe a couple times a week and doing routes up there, just see what was going on. If you want to go to another slide.
Yeah, one thing I'll just add with that, the just kind of the risk and production involved. I mean, you ride up this rope tow, and that's a loose sense of the word. You're basically getting dragged up through rocks, except where the carpet was that and some other people put down to cover some of the rocks, and then do this slow gaining traverse across where these big crowns are to get up here, or boot it up there and then get across to just a real kind of flat traverse. So it's not a real simple place to get people out of. It wasn't real conducive to, hey, let's just go do some work over there and see what's going on. It was kind of a, pseudo backcountry, really. I mean, when you figure how far away rescue is over there.
So when we ride the rope tow, we traverse across to the shoulder here and then boot up the ridge here, usually. We had been observing that some. I did a route here once in around '84. There was a helicopter skiing operation that was skiing out the summit that lasted for a couple months. And one day, it would have been '84, when Bruce Tremper was working at the area. Randy mentioned that Tremper worked at Bridger for a while, and after that he came to work at Big Sky for a couple of years. And I guess he learned enough at Big Sky that he could go off and become a forecaster. So that's what he wanted to do after that. But just one time, we got helicoptered up here. We're going to go work on this cornice. It was getting big. We're going to take some shots out there and work on that after sweep at the end of the day. So we're coming down across here. We're going to cross this area here. This is the Lennon little gullies. There's some little chutes in there. This is the outer slide. And we were right in there. We threw a shot. We didn't want to cross it. We threw a shot up here where it's steep. And it slid down to here where there's a little bit of a bench. This is the roller. It's a big wind roller that forms. So winds come across here predominantly. Anyway, it stopped on that little bench and went off. And about 30, 40 feet below the shot, there was it broke there. There was a ground about 4 feet deep. And then another 50 feet down on the rollover, where it gets steeper, it stepped down to the ground another 6 feet. So there's a good, parts of that where it's 10 feet slab that went out. And it went all the way down to mature trees here. That was before this. So anyway, that's the first time I'd seen the big slide in London. So that, we knew, obviously, and just looking at it, there's a lot of potential there. So we had some, experience out there a little bit. But, yeah, what's amazing with that slide that impressed me was, the slide gets going, you just see the dust cloud down here, so you can't tell how far it goes till it settles. But after the slide it went, you could hear the rocks chinking and clattering downhill for quite a while, because most of that bed surface is talus rocks. So we proceeded down there and did our route. So another time, and 1 year before the tram went in, an actual slide came out of Mark's here. That was a deep slide, that going right there. And so we got to see firsthand the debris line was right here, right up against to where the Shedhorn lift ended up being built the next summer. Later in the spring, I hiked out here to the debris, and there's 2 trees that knocked over there, kind of the rings on that were 300 years old. So that's a big slide, but you can see obviously it could go a lot bigger than that also. So,
and that ground is about 3 meters. Remember, someone went out there afterwards. It was ballpark 9-10 feet.
Yeah, that was a more springtime, more snow. But yeah, it's just some of the history. That's about all I got on that right there, I guess.
So then, with the top terminal of Shedhorn, that's where it ended up being placed. So you want to talk about that, where it was going to be and why it didn't end up where it did?
Well, originally we were talking about where to put a lift here. Thought this is some mature trees here. And thought that would be about as high as you wanted to risk putting the terminal there for obvious reasons. There wasn't any mature trees up here. And if you do a shot across here, we wanted to have a traverse where you could get over around here to the Shedhorn lift and back to the bowl. Problem is these kind of rocks are pretty cliffy here. Well, if you did it right, you could make a good road through there, but they kind of did the easy route going above those cliffs, and so they put the lift up higher here. So one way to mitigate some of the hazard to the lift was talk them into building an avalanche berm here. And this picture doesn't show it real well, but it goes across the hill quite a bit, unmarked where the top should be, and they hadn't decided to find a location on the lift yet, so it went across the hill more than it needed to be. They could have built it more like here, and it wouldn't have had to change the direction of the flow so much. You know, that slide that took out the lift, though, you know, it had so much speed when it hit this that I think the consensus is it wouldn't have mattered. But some of the other slides that we've had that aren't so big, that aren't hitting that as fast, it does do some good, and it does turn the flow away from the lift there.
Yeah, and it got reshaped too after this slide. They did some work on it to try to make it taller and straighten it after the lift for the slide we talked about. Anything else on the older history before there?
Well, I don't know, you're going to get into the routes.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
We can get into that later.
Yep.
So go ahead.
So then the tram opened up December 1995, and that year there were no deep slab slides. At least while I was there, it was the only year. Has it remained that, or it was the only year where we didn't record any deep slab avalanches on the south face since the tram opened? Was the initial year?
I think so.
I think it is. It snowed over 100 inches mid-mountain in October that year, so it's kind of like being on Mount Baker or Shasta or something. It was very much not like Big Sky, which was great because they were working on the thing construction-wise through all of that. Had to bring a couple of guys down injured out of the bowl when you're worried about getting hit by slides while they're working on the tram at night. Trying to build the bottom terminal was pretty funny in a weird way. So yeah, that year it was, I wouldn't say it lulled anyone into a false sense of security, but it was not indicative at all of what to expect in the next 20, 30 years or whatever going forward. It was fairly straightforward dealing with it. You're dealing with a lot of new snow avalanches. So then back to that year, 1996, I'll just hit on a couple things here. This is temperature with max temps in the blue and min temps in the red. And two things that are significant was a rain event on November 19th. You can see the big spike in temps. Before that it had been, fairly snowy, fairly cool, a little warm spell there. And when it rained, it was falling on top of a nice, basically a hard slab surface. It might have been glazed by the sun before that, hard to say. And so basically you have a layer of snow that's covering up enough of the rock that's out there to get rid of a lot of that local terrain variation. And then rain on it, which turned it into a nice blue-gray skating rink, basically, at that point. And then the other interesting thing was on December 9th, we had a similar avalanche. It involved, multiple paths on one shot, triggered that it was, 800,000 feet wide by the time it was got done flanking out sideways. So really similar to the one that ended up destroying the lift, but not as big. And it wasn't, the avalanche itself isn't due to warming. The spike in the temperature was on December 9th, but that spike is a southwest wind event. Because the few days previous to that, from December 5th through the 9th, through the 8th, was the only 3-day break with no snow, probably through the middle of February that year. And then the winds kicked up, warmed up, southwest winds, and it can just move all the snow that had been sitting around when it wasn't windy, just kind of cool and windy. And these temperatures are from down below tree line, so probably knock 6 or 8 degrees off them for the most part for what it's like up high. Snowfall, early season, same thing. There's not a lot of big take-home points, but we look at the rain event here in late November. And then just nice consistent snow, the one little gap right there, and that's when the first avalanche happened. that went down, and it made it to the berm, but then took a right-hand turn. And if you just look at the bases, that's not what it normally is, 68 inches before the first of the year in southwest Montana. Doesn't happen that often. So an unusually snowy year, and then it just kept getting deeper from there. So quick weather recap on it. November 19th formed a really good rain crust. Had Lenin, first dictator, second dictator A. This is a crown from a different year. It's done this a few times where it'll kind of flank over and then come down here and then continue flanking out down a little bit lower. And this is the berm that Jens was talking about. So this is taken from the top of Shedhorn, roughly. This picture is. Then sustained snow and wind pretty much consistently right after that December 9th slide. It wasn't a scenario where you had a couple inches of low-density snow and it just sat there and faceted. It was something that kept, shuffling the deck, is what I would say, where you kept changing the surface layers. So there wasn't a real super prominent faceted layer like there was for the December 9th slide. That December 9th slide, there were facets, depth or call it whatever you want, but that was a kind of a classic type thing, where here we're left with a do-over. You have this ice crust with new snow falling on it, pretty much just snow and wind. So on December 25th, tragic accident up at Big Sky where a patroller was killed. Erica Pankow was an explosives accident up on the summit. Routes had just started at that point, so this whole area didn't have routes done on the 25th, really. I think 1 or 2 shots were thrown. That's about it. And on that day, we recorded 16 inches at Mid-Mountain, which doesn't happen a whole lot. And then it continued snowing the next day, too, into the 26th. So, yeah, over 2 feet on the upper mountain. That's a pretty conservative estimate, I would think, with strong winds, 30 to 60 miles an hour, west-southwest winds on the 25th and 26th. Again, on the 26th, it was warmer, but it's not like a warming event. It's more just shifting to a southwest flow, kind of like what's going on now. It warmed up a bit. So on the 26th, I'll say one other thing just on the 25th. I don't mean to be flippant at all when I say that having someone who you work with get killed, you come into work the next morning, and it's just a really weird situation to be in. It was a really weird vibe in the locker room. Everything about it was odd. And it's really hard to come up with a bigger distraction to picture, something that makes it harder to focus on what you're doing than that. And it's, for real conditions as much as it can be. And I think that is one thing that, I don't look at any actions of one person that happened that day and saying, yeah, you're just completely lost your focus, but I think that was obviously a player in this. Another big thing that happened that day was, 2 of them. Jens hurt his knee on the 25th that morning, tore some cartilage, so all of a sudden the snow safety director and the one-person snow safety department's dispatching, and they're out of the loop. So on the 25th and 26th he was. And then one of the other people who had been around for a while just didn't show up to work. He had decided that he quit and didn't let anyone else know, and that happened on the 25th too. So we kind of get into that, that cascade of events, slippery slope. You can already see it start. It's what else is going to go wrong at this point. Do you have anything else to add about that morning on the 26th, Mike, for just before we went out?
Not
including routes, yeah. With routes, Mike, if you want to just kind of take over and point where the general flow of Lenin Low and Lenin High, or Lenin Ridge and Lenin Low, what our plan was for that day, and then I'll talk about Lenin Low where we were.
So there was a slight change where the Lenin High team classically does the entire ridge. We had changed things around where Lenin Low and Lenin High were going to go out at a similar time, but the Lenin High team was going to access the route through Upper Stutzman's and wrap around on what's now the Yeti Traverse and start our route in these start zones for the dictators, while another team, the Lenin Low team, which generally tends to focus on the left side of Lenin and then finally gets over and does some cleanup work in the dictators, they were going to be working this part of the slope while we came in and started and stayed up on the ridge on this side. And so we had a team of 3 in this area, and myself and my partner, who was the assistant to Jans at the time, started working in this area that morning. And that morning was, really, really stormy, super, super low visibility. There was a cloud deck. That the actual cloud deck, I think, was somewhere in here, because I think from Alto Ridge you did have visibility down to Shedhorn, which kind of comes into play a little bit later. But there was a really thick cloud deck that was coming through about at that elevation, as well as heavy, heavy winds and blowing snow and ground blizzard conditions. And you literally couldn't, there were times when visibility was literally 20 feet, 15 feet. I couldn't see Berkland sitting over there at sometimes, and then the wind would slow down and you can kind of see, and then it'd just go right out again. So that was that as an overview.
Yep. Yeah, really bad viz, and I think I remember writing it down like 5 to 50 feet, and that's about what it was. You couldn't see anything. So with the bad viz, I was on a 3-person route going out, starting from the top. This is looking at those upper starting zones up in Lenin, where this is the fence. And this thing was about halfway buried at that point, so it kind of got down towards the bottom of the fence in here and tied into it. At that point, it was pretty new, and maybe on the chicken shit, but at that point it was really comforting to tie into that thing. And then threw 3 shots, one over here, one down straight below me, which probably would have been somewhere in there, and then one on the other side of that you can't see. And not at the same time, but threw 3 shots, heard the little maybe, because it's blowing really hard. Couldn't tell what was going on, couldn't see any results. Then I kind of Z'd down, picked my way down over here, and made a move to get over just right at this fence over here, what we call the Marks fence, where I just laid down on the snow. And then this picture is taken from the perspective of where Mike and his route partner would have come in to that ridge, where the lower team, the Lenin Ridge team, would have entered this area. The other 2 people who were with me, which was Eddie Garcia, so if you ever want to hear Eddie's story over there at Bridger, he can tell you about it too. And then Todd Amble, who was there for his first day of work for the year. He's a farmer out in North Dakota in the summer, who'd been around for a while. He's one of the more experienced guys up there at this point. But that was literally his first run of the year, and he ended up throwing the shot that triggered this thing. So, kind of interesting there. So maybe that's where we were. Those guys worked their way, Todd and Eddie, down through these rocks, which is what we call the little gullies, and got a shot somewhere down, I'm thinking roughly in here. Is that right, Mike?
I think so, yeah.
But we're not sure exactly where it was. So then this is looking back from the perspective of the bottom of the fence, where I was, and then those guys picked their way down there. I got a shot kind of out in this area, this kind of no man's land. That's that little bench that Jens was talking about earlier. And then this would be the Lenin roller, this is a low snow year, and that just becomes a big wind feature. So Mike and his route partner came in roughly this level, and here's a slide that Mike can explain a little bit about that and just what happened when the shot went off and all that, where you were.
So this series of photos was to recreate that, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's about where you were standing.
Yeah, so that's me standing about where I was standing that day. And this is up above 2nd Dictator, but it's completely different from what it was that year. The cornice went way out, and it was very vertical. Probably that morning it was somewhat overhung, but this cornice has been knocked way back, never formed up like it did in that 96 early season. So you can picture, I was probably standing somewhere out in there in space with vertical snow down to where it transitions back to the actual slope. And for some reason, I don't recall, I just don't remember why, but my route partner had left me there, and he had ventured out, kind of out towards Lennon, and kind of dropped off the ridge. And I wasn't sure where he was, very low vis, and I crept out to the edge of the cornice to see if I could see him, because I was starting to worry, like, where's he, you know? And I could see him through the intermittent viz, kind of making his way back towards me, but kind of doing a gaining traverse, because he had gotten a little bit lower than I think he wanted to be, and was trying to get back up on top of the ridge. And from his written statement that Scotty got, when he was working back across, he watched me kind of go out to the edge of the cornice to try to find him, and he had a really bad feeling, oh shit, he's going to go over the edge. And I didn't, but I could see him coming towards me, and he got to within, I think, like 20 feet, maybe even closer, like 10 feet, because we weren't very far apart when I just started falling through space. And I never heard the shot go off, but I saw a crack form right behind me, and I could see it form between my partner's legs, as you know, it split him. I mean, right down the middle, and it went right behind me, and we just started free falling through space. And it's a really vivid image in my mind of my partner facing me, and he was in this perfect skier stance as he was trying to sidestep back up, and we're both just falling straight down. And I remember pushing chunks of snow away from me as I fell, and we hit the bed surface, both of us at about the same time, and neither one of us took the ride, which is just really remarkable, because we landed on a really steep slope. Even, you know, on a regular year, that's right there at the ridge. It's got to be high 40s where we landed, and we both stuck. And I think my tail of my ski went through that ice crust, and I kind of was boinging on my tail, just and Rich stuck as well. And the whole, and at that time, I think I was a third-year patroller,
Yeah.
and I had never really seen avalanches of this scale. You know, I had never. It was so far outside of my experience. You know, I'd seen sloughs and stuff at Bridger when I was a lifty there and stuff, but I hadn't. And I'd come through the whole previous season on the south face, and we never, like Scotty said, got any activity. And I honestly had no idea what had just happened for a couple seconds. And I know that makes me sound really stupid, but that's just the cold hard truth of it. I was, what the hell just happened? And the whole world turned from white to this brownish gray yellow color of the bed surface, and you could hear rocks falling and tinkling. I'm sure you could hear the avalanche rumbling, but I don't remember hearing the avalanche rumbling. And then it dawned on me that, oh my God, the whole thing just went away. And my partner kind of came over to me and just kind of grabbed my arm and stared at me, and that's when it started to sink in that, wow, we almost just bought it right here too. And coupled with the day after Erica died, it was a pretty intense time for sure. And Bob got on the radio. He was on Alto or headed for HT, and said that the Shedhorn shack is gone, and the avalanche had run down, overrun the berm, and there was a log cabin at the top of Shedhorn, which served as the lift station. and it had blown that off the mountain. There was no evidence of that shack whatsoever, except for the concrete slab. Once we finally got a few thousand feet down the hill to that elevation.
Yeah, what Mike was saying about the communication is definitely compromised up there. We knew that they were out there somewhere. We had no idea they were out on the slope. You couldn't really hear anything. And I remember two things. I was at that fence right there. Where am I? Yeah, it was right there. The Marks fence, yeah. So I was like 5 feet away from it, so I could see the crown form. It was like 5 or 6 feet where I was. I was standing on the rock. And a couple things saying, hey, there goes Lennon, 5-6 feet, saying that on the radio, and then about 20 seconds later hearing those guys saying, hey, Lennon Low, we're okay. Rich or Mike, one of them said that on the radio, and it had never even dawned on us that they were out there involved in that thing. We couldn't see where it went. And just like Jens was saying about rocks tinkling down, about a minute after the slide, you could still hear a rock fall. It sounded like a summer avalanche, not a winter event. And just a really guttural thing. It was the first big slide that I've been right next to. It definitely changed some things. So it was about 5 to 9 feet deep, the crown, depending on where you were. Ran about 1,500 vert. It was about 1,000 feet wide. That's where the shack was, right there. You can see it's just completely gone. The avalanche berm's just up above here. This is an hour or so after it happened. That's the top few towers of the Shedhorn lift, where the debris flow actually went down and where the cabin was slammed into the trees. There's a toboggan for those of you that ski down at Big Sky. That's another couple hundred vertical feet below here. It's about 1,500 vertical to the top of Shedhorn, and then it ended up running about 1,900. The avalanche did. So that toboggan that was at the top of Shedhorn ended up getting tacoed around a tree. It was kind of funny. There was another one that ended up taking the full ride that was tied on to the rock rib right below here. Basically, there's a rock rib just a little lower, the second dictator toboggan, and it took the whole ride on the surface, and Todd Amble skied up to it and said, hey, this one's fine. Just skied away with it. Pretty impressive. So it goes to show about luck a little bit, where you are and where you shouldn't be. That's looking at the berm, which, as Jens said, it isn't oriented parallel enough to the anticipated flow. It was at too steep an angle. It was, since this event, it was made larger and straightened somewhat, but still less than ideal. And that's what Mike was saying. The whole path looked kind of like that. There's a little more snow and ice up in the starting zone, a little higher in spots. So lessons learned. For me, it was a big introduction to something that's really stuck with me, and I've had it banged into my head time and time again, to never trust a rapid load on ice or a really hard crust, whether there's facets or not, whether you have a weak layer or not. If you put too much snow too fast on a really hard surface, all bets are off. And then, Jens, you want to talk about how to just kind of reinforce something that you would always talk to us about?
Safe zones?
Yep.
Well, I just think, you only know if you're in a safe zone if all the snow around you avalanches to the ground, and you're going to be okay. That's where the safe zone is. If you're, especially when you're doing the shot, see people compromise that at times. And boy, but it's a good idea not to. Just think of all the snow that's above you sliding to the ground. And if that would catch you, then you're not in a safe zone if it all goes. So I know people get complacent because they don't see it slide, that big. But if you get in that habit of not having any snow above you when your shack goes up, that's what's killed a lot of people. And we've had a number of close calls in other areas where people have gotten caught, buried, or taken little rides because they were on a finger and there was snow on both sides of them, and they were in a pretty much a safe spot, and they might have just got caught enough to take a little bit of a ride, but they didn't get buried. So I guess you could say, well, they were in a safe enough spot. But that's just got to think in those terms of all the snow going away to the ground, especially if you're thinking there's a chance of a deep slab avalanche. And if you want to stay alive, that's the way you should be thinking, is what I would tell people.
Yeah, and to bang in on what Rod and some other people were saying, they're always changing. That the safe zones it's a fluid thing. That they're not going to stay in the same place. Every day is different. And then, Mike, if you want to talk about communication and procedures and operationally what happened.
Yeah, this season was transformative for the ski patrol. Everything changed after that. Jens talked about in private conversations leading up to this, the 1983 event in Highlands Bowl, and also, is it 83 in Stutzman?
Yeah, in 82, 83, David Sessom was killed in an avalanche, and that was a big shakeup for the Big Sky's management. The owners who bought the ski area in 76, they're from Michigan. They never managed a ski area with an avalanche problem. And they didn't take it as serious as they should. And there's always a rift between patrol and management about having enough experienced patrollers and doing the routes. Just having the people around who could do that. And a lot of patrollers quit over the years because they were kind of cutting corners, and the number of people they hired, just give them training and have enough people to get stuff open timely. So that kind of came to a head in 82, 83 with management. And so that was a big turnaround for me because I was a newer patroller then. But the management changed a lot then, as a lot of these watershed moments will do, And so we had support from management leading into the tram deal, but it was also kind of a new deal because when we got the tram, it like doubled the amount of avalanche training we were dealing with and doubled the amount of routes we were doing. So it decreased our experience level considerably from what we had. And so we knew that, and we were trying to go cautiously, but some of the things like communications and having set procedures for these newer routes. So when the visibility is bad or there's a lot of congestion on the radio, and so a lot of that stuff, this was the time to really take a step back and make sure we're doing things as safe as we could. And Mike was in his formative years, so he can remember that better than me. So a lot of things that would change then. Put it that way.
All right. The first thing, trying to separate this event from the previous day's event, in my mind, and I think operationally they're tied closely together. It just to have one of the patrollers killed on the 25th, to destroy a chairlift on the 26th, and to have two other guys almost, if we had taken that ride, it's hard to say what would have happened to us, and so that changed. These 2 days changed things a lot, and the operational changes, it basically allowed Jens to create a snow safety department. Before that, there was just Jens, and then for snow safety. Then the tram went in, and I believe they gave you an assistant, finally. So then it was a two-person snow safety department. And that's a hell of a lot of terrain to keep up with for two guys. It's a huge task. And so then these events happened, and that allowed Jens to create an actual snow safety department. And then it went to a four-person snow safety department, and that's when Scotty and I got hired on. But I feel for Jens. He hires me and Scotty, and we're then hired on, and we're in our fourth year of patrolling. And now you're snow safety out here, and that must have been no great comfort to Jens to have us staring at him. And but it started that moving, and that was a big change for the ski patrol. And there was a real emphasis, I remember those first couple of years, of really trying to separate the snow safety department from the regular ski patrol. We had different logos on our coat, which we no longer have anymore. but it was an effort, I think, on management's part at that time to try to address the issue of snow safety and focus it with a separate department through the ski patrol, of course, but really dedicated to that. And so it created the start of what we've turned into today. Another operational thing that changed is we now put out a mountain travel plan every morning. And it used to be at Big Sky that the departments, lift maintenance, snowcats, they were supposed to check in with the ski patrol to go to certain places. And sometimes that happened, oftentimes it didn't. And there was a real culture of, we're not going to let the redcoats tell us what to do and where we can drive our sleds if you're on lift maintenance or whatnot. And that has changed, and part of that change is putting out a formal travel plan every morning. And so now we actively forecast for various areas of the mountain, and we give specific travel plans based on a red, yellow, green thing. And that was something that my rookie year, I got to go to Fernie on exchange in April, and that was something that I saw the Fernie Ski Patrol do at night. They'd get on the radio and give the cat crew red, yellow, green forecasts for where they could go on the mountain at night. And so I took that from exchange, so besides getting horribly drunk, I did remember that. And so that was a good benefit of exchange. Like, well, here's what another outfit does, and so we incorporated that into a daily travel plan. And so that was a operational change. And from where it was then and where it is now, it's just totally different. It's just accepted practice that there will be communication, there will be a travel plan, and that's been a really, really good shift operationally. Scotty, can you bring up the slide with an overview of the landing area? And we've changed our routes now. We're a lot more formal with when routes go out and how the route flow off the top goes. And you can imagine, to control all of Lone Mountain, including the north side of the ridge here, there's a lot of patrollers leaving here, and we've got to control all these start zones up here just to facilitate travel for people to get to their other routes. And so, without going into too much detail, we don't have the situation now where one might be blasting in this area while another team might be in that area, which is that's an obvious change. It's funny how institutional memory dims, because I've had to argue long and hard with some of my coworkers who talk about, well, why? Maybe because the Lennon High team starts up here and gets done down here, and it's a long route and it's a heavy bag that you're hauling when you take off. But I've had to argue. Some people want to go to where our team comes down and starts taking care of the wave while the team is shooting in these start zones. And I've had to argue that point a few times with a few different people. And I'm adamant that we're not going to do that, because you're starting to get into that gray area where you're lighting shots here, and maybe someone's standing there, and things could propagate through. So that's a major operational change for the better. That we really focus on route flow and what start zones are controlled and what aren't, and who can be where at any time. Also, communication en route has changed markedly from this time. This used to be, you'd call in your shots and you'd call in every result. So you can imagine the radio traffic that would generate. And it was thought to be safer at the time because, more information is better, right? But now we know what's going on the mountain, all the way around. Well, that led to such dense radio traffic that communication suffered with that. So now, we've gone back to less is more with that. We still call in all of our shots, but unless you get a significant result, results aren't called in. But if somebody rips out a deep slab, they are expected to get on the radio and make a general announcement that, hey, Hanging Valley just went out 5 feet deep to the ground or to the ice crust or whatever. So that's a communication shift that has changed on the mountain. And also with communications for calling in your shots, it used to be a lot looser where if you were going to shoot first dictator, you might call in fire in the hole first dictator while you're working into position, and then you're dicking around with this and that. And now we stress in our training that you do not call in your shots until you're absolutely ready to deploy. And it's kind of counterintuitive. You think more notice is better, but it's not, because now when I hear somebody call in a fire in the hole somewhere, I know that in about 2 minutes that shot's going to go off. What got me and Rich is there was a shot called in up here, but we weren't sure if it had gone off or not, or you couldn't hear, you couldn't see, and so we really stress in our training that when you call your fire in the hole, you are absolutely ready to deploy. And so that's a change there. And then another big shift in the institutional knowledge of Big Sky is, and Scotty alluded to it, is like repeat avalanches. There was a feeling that since this thing had ripped out on the 9th of December, there's no way it's going to rip out wall to wall 2.5 weeks later, and sure enough it did. And so I think we're a lot less trusting of previous results and whatnot. And it's tough to manage as a forecaster, because you go around Lone Mountain, or I go around Lone Mountain with a certain amount of paranoia. If you do that long enough, then you're the guy crying wolf, and you don't want to go there. But boy, oh boy, if you trust this mountain too far, you're gonna get smoked. It's gonna bite you. And so that's a kind of a cultural shift that I think a lot of the patrol is starting to understand, is that you can't really trust the mountain and the snowpack very much. And with enough load, even on a relatively strong snowpack, something could happen. So those are some of the institutional and cultural and operational shifts that you can kind of trace back to December 25th and 26th of 96.
Yeah, and I think, I'll just reiterate that I think that event, it hits on pretty much all the other things, whether it was Carl's talk or Rod's talk, it's amazing all the similarities to me in there that come out of the same thing, what Randy was saying about snowpack's always changing, the safe zones are always changing, it doesn't like to have anything done to it rapidly. So yeah, I think with that we'll open it up to questions if anyone has any.